Labdien! Šodien mūsu skatītāji, un jau kāds, kā saka, ilgstošāks skatītājs, un arī visi nākamie, kas mums pievienosies pēc šīs semināra tiešraides. Šodien mēs jau esam kopā mūsu 8. mentoru, kā saka, semināru, mentoringa programmas semināru ciklā, kur mums šodien pievienosies ANO Litvak, un viņa stāstīs par savu, teiksim tā, tādu dzīves pieredzi, dzīves gājumu, tieši vairāk, teiksim tā, par profesionālajām lietām, sākot jau no studiju gadiem, un tad līdz lielākai karjeras izaugsmei, jau tādā ļoti mērķtiecīgā gājienā, ja tā var teikt. Un kas ir jāmin svarīgi, kas ir ļoti svarīgi, ka šīs dienas seminārs mums notiks angļu valodā. Tā kā jautājums varat arī iesūtīt latviski, bet tie tiks visi pārtulkoti angļu valodā. Un tad tagad es arī pārslēgšos uz angļu valodu. And yes, so I will invite our speaker today, ANO Litvak, from the international organization, to first maybe introduce herself a bit, and then we will go into the seminar. Yes, please, the floor is yours.
Labdien visiem! Man sauc ANO Litvaka. Es šodien runāšu angliski, tāpēc, ka man profesionāli veida tāda dzīve bija angliski, un varu varbūt atbildēt kaut kas latviski, bet man būs mazliet vieglāk angliski. So I will switch to English if everybody's okay with that. I'm from Riga. I'm from Latvia, just like all of you. I was a young girl there in the 80s and the 90s. Everybody can hear me well, right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
great.
So I decided that I wanted to go somewhere where I can be a lawyer at a very young age, when I was about 6 years old. And I couldn't think of a better place to do it, and a better career than being a lawyer, a jurist, and maybe working in an organization like the United Nations that helps people. So I was about 6 years old when I had the general idea what I wanted to do. Of course, I didn't know what UN was doing and what it stood for, but the career and the studies gradually led to that. Now, I will go now to the beginning to tell you how the road began. I was studying in Riga. The 90s were a difficult time for all of us. It was a bit crazy, and imagine being, a kid, a teenager during that time. And what was very different from today, and something that I want to address with you guys, is that we really didn't have that much internet at the time. So figuring out how do I want to go study abroad, whether it was in France or United States, was very difficult. All where the National Library is in Latvia, in Riga, that's where at the time we used to go, and we would actually get books. Imagine that. So we would get how to apply for a university. And there was a phone directory where you would look up universities at the time. And you would have no idea what to do, how to translate grades, what do they require, what the admissions process is, zero idea with bad internet. Imagine that. And why I'm saying this to you, most important messages that I want to get across from the start is that, if I could do it at the time, and I had many excuses, you could just say, oh my God, I can't figure it out, right? Then you guys today, you have every opportunity in the world, and it's not impossible. You can all do it, achieve it. I'm always here. This is why we have this mentorship program. You can ask questions. You can reach out to other colleagues in the law field, in international law field, in politics. And there's a big networking today, maybe a little bit of effort to find people, the right people, but you have every opportunity in the world today, so that's my general premise for this presentation. So going a little back to my story is I went to Riga school number 40, which is somewhat called an English school. So the focus for my class was on languages. So I studied English and French. And I had an opportunity to apply to Sorbonne. And I got into Sorbonne actually in my grade 12. But you know how you are when you're 17, you think you know better than everybody and you know everything and you know how your life's gonna be. So I decided, even though I got in, that Europe was too small for me. I wanted to study law, and if you know law, there's precedent law, which is the US law, and then the civil codex, which is most European countries. I wanted to study precedent law. I, watched a lot of movies and wanted to really, argue for the criminal law. That was the precedent law in terms of presumption of innocence. All that really interested me. So I really saw myself in the United States more than in civil system. So imagine that. A lot of people were very angry that I took the spot in Sorbonne, because at the time you had to go to the French ministry, the embassy, and take the test. But my heart was really in San Francisco. You know the song, left my heart in San Francisco. So that's how I felt at 17. Now, you guys, this is 2001. And what happens in 2001?
Oh,
Imagine. So
Oh.
I chose to leave in July 4th, 2001. July 4th, why? Because it's the Independence Day of United
Yes.
States. You're gonna move all the way to San Francisco, then of course it has to be an Independence Day. So I was 17 years old. I took my 2 suitcases, not that much money, just kind of bags full of dreams, no idea. And the application, going back to this application process, I applied to some random places in California, just like purely random, because we could not know in Latvia back then what was a good university in San Francisco. Like the research was so difficult to do. I was just happy that any school in San Francisco, any college, any university would take me. So I come to San Francisco, and of course, again, I'm thinking, oh my God, the world is, my oyster. I'm going to be so successful. Everything's great. First thing I figure out, I have no idea how to get to university. I have to get up 5 in the morning to get there by 9. I come to the university, and there I am. I want to study criminal law, I say to they have this advisors, right? And they literally look at me like I'm a completely crazy person. I'm like, what's the problem? I want to, how in Latvia we have lectures, we have majors. So you want to do criminal law, you want to do law, you go study law. Guess what? There's no such thing that you want to study law when you get into university in the United States. Doesn't exist in nature. Doesn't exist. So your first 4 years until you get your bachelor's degree, you study whatever you want. You can be English major. You can be whatever you guys like, English literature. It doesn't matter. I tried to stick with something that in my brain at the time, again, because I had nobody to give me any advice. What was the closest thing to criminal law? Criminal justice. But it's not anywhere near what you would have in Latvia if you study law. So criminal justice was also very interesting. I was interested in prisons, in things like that. So criminal justice was the closest to me. But you have to study everything in college here. You go and study math. You thought that, oh my God, finally I can forget about math. No, so you study a whole bunch of different sciences. Biology you have to study. So there's a list of different classes that you have to take all the way until you get your bachelor's degree. So for 4 years, I studied criminal justice and had to pass all these other subjects that are required. I did a few semesters in San Francisco. Then my friend from Latvia came to Atlanta in the state, Georgia, that's the state in the United States. And I went to do a few semesters in Atlanta, which was great because you get to travel the completely different side of United States, the South, they call it, which is very different from California. And then I came back again to San Francisco to finish my bachelor's. Now, what was beautiful in those kind of dark ages, imagine people were just getting laptops. It was just only starting with the internet.
It's like legal blonde. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm always thinking it's like legal blonde, when she went to Harvard, and I imagine how she stands in the line with the laptop. I don't know if you know the scene.
Yes. Well, this one was worse. Because you really have no idea what you're doing and where you go. So coming back to San Francisco, I wanted to do criminal justice. So there was this program where if you study really well, they said that they will take 2 girls to do an internship at the prison. And you guys know Clint Eastwood? He's like now at 80 or 90 years old, but we all remember those Western movies. So there's this famous movie with Clint Eastwood when he is in like this top cop and he is in federal prisons going after the worst criminals. So that prison actually exists in California, San Quentin. And you can look it up. It's a federal criminal for worst crimes. So like murderers, rapists, death penalty cases, drugs, obviously. So that exists. And because of my studies, I was able to get to go to work between the 2 girls. I was 18 years old, so I got to this worst prison. Very interesting. In the morning, they would line us up outside the prison to see what we're wearing. And if you had anything provocative, any color, because this is gangs in LA also, blue represents something, red represents another gang. So specific colors you cannot wear. Anything obviously provocative because you're a woman. Imagine you're in a population of these thousands of worse criminals, right? So if you wear something provocative, you wear this white overall, like, the painter suits. You would have to go into the prison in that. So luckily I avoided that, but always fun. And you go in the prison, this is maximum security, right? So one door locks behind you, another one opens. One door. So this is really, you have to know what you're doing. The interesting for me was how do you gain respect as a future lawyer, as a professional? Going from studies to the career, how do you establish that respect from people and clients? I'll tell you why clients, because I represented a lot of people on death row. There was a California appellate project that later, with DNA, proved that many of these people were innocent, in fact. This is also beginning of the DNA research, right? And you can read about it, that a lot of these people turned out to be not even at the crime scene, and the DNA proved that they were not the ones who committed the crime. So I represented this movement of the California Appellate Project. And how do you establish all these guys? Imagine you're 18 years old, right? You're a student in university, and you have this, some of them African-American guys and basketball players, like, 2 meters, and they're like, are you my lawyer? So they start banging on the doors. Kinds of crazy stories. I was there one time, a riot started. And when a riot starts, you have to drop on the floor flat like that because they have water guns. So they make sure everybody, is behaving well, and all these different stories, of being in prisons. I was so interested. That's the beauty of maybe not having Instagram and Facebook at that time, because it wasn't really like, producing this image of yourself or putting out something to, the wider public. It was really whatever you were into, whatever your passion was, that was the driving forces, which is something that I also want to kind of share with you, is that, if you're really passionate about something, just kind of go for it, because I didn't know where it's going to lead and what it's going to give me in life, but I was just so interested, and later on it helped me a lot, so, the Facebook and Instagram is wonderful today, but kind of listen to yourself, listen to what really drives you professionally and interest-wise. That was one of my experiences. There was a death row inmate, and of course you have crazy people there. He was one time walking in handcuffs, and he was walking like this to me, and he turned to me, stopped right in front of me, and he's all in shackles, they have handcuffs in the back. And he says to me, "What, never seen a death row man walking before?" And you're 18 years old, right? You're a little girl from Latvia, right? So all these experiences, they build you. They build your professionally, personally, your strengths, your character, part of life, right? Going back to why 2001 was an important year. If you remember, September 11th happened in 2001. So even though I was a good student, I could not receive any scholarships because I was on F1 visa, and F1 visa was the same visa as some of the terrorists that committed September 11th was on. So imagine you're 17, you just arrived in America, and you have FBI calling you and asking you how many credits and how many units are you taking. And you have to first figure out what are credit those units, because in Latvia, university, you go to college, you go to university, you have your program, you have your lectures. In United States, you create your own program. You have to take 12 units, so very, 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 and that alone took years just to figure out. You know? So I couldn't work anywhere. Okay, I couldn't get any scholarships. It doesn't matter that I was a really brilliant student. There were no scholarships available. So it was a very difficult year to start, you know. In Latvia, you know how to cross the street. You don't have to take 4 hours just to get to university. To pay something with a credit card, you're not 18 years old. You have to find somebody to sign up so you can create a bank account. So all these little things that you thought you knew and everything's going to be, you're going to become the president of the United States, tomorrow, doesn't really work like that, But again, that's why we have networking today. 4 years of bachelor's. So in 4 years, I got my bachelor's of arts and science. I got my criminal justice degree. That's not the end of the story. In the United States, that's really nothing. With a bachelor's degree, really, it doesn't really help you a lot. You need a professional degree, a higher degree, especially if you want to be a lawyer, 3 more years. So 4 years and 3 years to get Juris Doctorate, which is what I have, JD, it's called for short. That's where you really, really study law. So that's more of like the university or whatever the program is at the law school that you guys were telling me about. That's more aligned with that. But that's already 5th, 6th, and 7th year of your studies. And there you can study, in the United States, you have about 13 areas of law that you really need to know to graduate from law school. That's what you see in the movies, with like law books like this for each subject, and you take this big suitcase with you and you go to the libraries. That's really, really when you get to, Supreme Court studies, and you really have like, your debates and discussions. That's really the law school, what they call in the United States. And for example, Kamala Harris, who was just running, for president in the United States, I actually worked with her in California because the internship that I had then when I was in law school was at the public defender's office, which is a defense of criminals. And she was the district attorney at the time, so she was the main prosecutor at the time. But her career is the same as mine in respect of that. You have bachelor's and then you have 3 years of law school. She just went the prosecution route, which is what a lot of people do. You switch. It's not like you only believe in one thing. This is part of practice. So now I'm in law school, guys. It's now getting very serious. And all these years, the difference between me and many other students, you have to maintain your status, immigration status. It was like, you're always under pressure. You can never relax. I cannot tell you of many, many, tears, nights where I didn't sleep because if you lose your status, if you lose your GPA, let's say you like make 1C, right? A, B, C, D, and F, you have the grades here. You make below, like say 275 average, you lose your immigration status. So imagine now having to tell everybody, oh, okay, I'm coming back to Latvia. And my father and everybody in my family who's been supporting me financially and otherwise, So it's not like you have to kind of grow up really fast, right? I did other jobs, whatever I could, work, and I tried to babysit to make some extra money because everything is expensive, guys. Each law book is like more than $100, But luckily my family supported me and I was able to, manage. But those internships, San Francisco Public Defender's Office, great office to remember, great practice, also criminal law. I did some private ones. I did the movie industry, private contracts for movies was also something to remember because it's California. Also, in the end of my law school, I went to work for the San Francisco City and County Human Rights Commission, which is where it got interesting. I was approached there by some immigrants from the former Soviet Union, and I realized that they had this crazy landlord from Philippines who was basically like a mafia guy, who was really discriminating against all these old people and had this bad scheme that was basically getting rid of tenants and moving in new tenants at the higher rate he can charge, right? So I had this case for 1 year. The guy's never lost a case before, had this best lawyer team, but I figured out, I was by myself doing this case. I figured out what his problem was because, sometimes even though you have a lot of money, doesn't mean you think of everything. And sometimes all the bad things you do, they backfire. So we won this case. It took me like 3, I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you, like, this is where, coming maybe from another country and seeing everything, from an outside perspective, which is the benefit that we may all have, something we can bring into the picture. I saw what he was doing wrong. Basically, I proved that he was purposely, intentionally making holes in the pipes that were leaking the apartments. But because he was trying to say that this old crazy people that were damaging the apartments. And I had the fire department picture of the inside the pipes, and I showed it to the judge, and within 3 minutes, the judge awarded not just the case against him, but they had penalty damages, which is rare in cases because, you can win a case, but it's very rare that judges want to get into like on top of it penalty, right? Cases. He lost his credit score, which is the most important thing in the United States not to have because you buy everything on credit, for 7 years, and there was basically a big win. So California White House, California legislature, they passed a resolution in my name. I had a big reception at the California White House. The resolution says, basically that this date a year, that's like my day a year, they passed this beautiful document. But the most important thing for me was that I saw that through my legal work, I can change life of people. Like I can actually change their lives for better. And that's what really gave me the push to go back to my original idea when I was 6 years old. I wanted to do it, remember, on an international scale, on a bigger scale. And this is when I got in contact with the Latvian mission in New York. And they had one person leaving at the time. So they interviewed me. Norman Spenke is this great ambassador that was there at the time. I came to New York, and he gave me a job with the Latvian mission in New York. Very exciting. 25 years old. Most people, get into the diplomatic world like way after 30, right? And that's kind of a common experience of all the diplomats, all the legal advisors. But it just so happened that Latvia, being a small country, which is good for some reasons, everybody kind of knows each other in a professional field. I spoke to the Latvian mission. I was already in the United States, so it's easier for me to come to New York from California. I know the law, and so they needed a person. So I came on board and I started working at the UN, one of the youngest people, and a woman at 25. There you go. So this is my story in New York. It was beautiful. I got to meet the presidents. I got to work with the presidents. I remember Prince Albert comes to me. Oh, hello, okay. And these guys, you also get to see that. Of course, everybody is different, but there are some people that you think of them like princes, kings, actresses, actors. They're just human beings, just like us. So the beautiful part of it was that, everybody's the same. There's me from Latvia, a little girl, my parents are not, presidents, diplomats, it just happens that through hard work, through, being there and working hard and, trying to make something out of myself, I happened to be there at the right time. And then I got to meet all these people, but everybody's really the same, the princes, the kings, the actresses, there's some actresses and there's some famous people who I might name, maybe not, but their dream is they have everything in the world, right? but they wanted to work in Office of Legal Affairs, which is where I work now. So everybody, you know, is different, but in the end of the day, we're all made from the same material. I worked with the Latvian mission for a few years. Unfortunately, the financial crisis happened in 2010. So we had to send, I was literally doing, all the diplomats were doing secretarial work. I had to send a letter to the landlord here that one of the diplomats had to go back home to Latvia. We were in a very difficult financial situation in 2010. So although I really loved working at the mission, I needed to live in New York. My law degree is here. My life is already here. I needed to find another job. And my dream was really not just to work for one country, but to work for an international organization. So that's how I eventually got a job in the United Nations itself. So in the Secretariat of the UN. And gradually I made my way into the Office of Legal Affairs of the United Nations. So I no longer represent one country. I represent the interest of the membership of the UN, which is today is 193 countries. And I work with the Legal Counsel's office itself. So whatever international law that you can think of in the world happens in this office. And we have exposure to all kinds of legal questions. It's a great job, a little bit crazy at times, especially these days. You see with all the Russia-Ukraine crisis, you have the Middle East crisis, and every other crisis you can think of that's maybe not on the news, which is a lot what the UN does, just doesn't get into, Fox News and CNN news, all the big news sometimes, but the legal work is enormous for this office. The point of the story is, hey, I was there in the 90s. We didn't even know if we were going to move out of the country ever, but all these borders opened up. We became independent. You can travel, you can find out, you can work hard, and you can really accomplish a lot of things. It's not going to be easy. Whoever's going to tell you it's easy, that I just don't believe it. I'm sorry, but we have each other to rely on. We have each other to share knowledge with, as we have great mentorship programs today. So whatever I can share, whatever you can ask me, silly or not silly, there is no silly question. When you're 17, and you think you know everything, and you literally sit there by yourself, and you have nobody to ask a question, there are no silly questions. So whatever I can share with you guys, just let me know. And I'm happy to be part of this mentorship program.
Yes, thank you very much. It was very interesting. How to say, as a young professional myself, I have to say you found the right words, how to word it, if I may say it as that. You have a way with words as a lawyer. That's the talent. Yes.
Non-intentional.
I will think about that. But yes, maybe to start, maybe with such a, a bit easier question, because just to understand, I know a bit about the, US educational system. So in this sense, these 3 years after these 4 years of bachelor, they would substitute as a master's degree somehow. Yes, correct?
No.
Today,
no.
How does it, let's say if we take European system and US system, and maybe with this, you could also take away, because this was my question as well, was did you need to pass bar or something?
Very good question, right to the bottom. And this is the question where I, kind of like in Latvian would say, you learn on your own mistakes. This is where you kind of, not necessarily your own mistakes, but you have to kind of learn on your own hard experience, which is now, I believe, would be a bit easier for you guys because more knowledge and experience is out there. You don't have to go this crazy route that I went, which is what I found later when I was asking about taking the bar. You don't have to come from Latvia, study for 4 years to get the bachelor's degree and then get a JD for 3 years. Many of my friends who are international lawyers now working here, they came from all kinds of European countries, not just European countries. They already come with a bachelor's degree, let's say in law, from Latvia. And you can take the bar. So you can become a lawyer here. You do a master's degree, which is not a JD. You do an LLM. So you do a specialized course. It's typically a year and a half in a specified area of law. And, in our case, international law, you can find a subject that you want to focus on. And most universities like NYU, for example, the biggest one, here they offer it for sure. Many states offer that. LLM is a year and a half, which is better than 3 years, right? And it's focused on something specific. You don't have to study, like, remember I was telling you all this 13 different areas of law, and you have to know civil procedure and criminal law and, evidence rules. This is something different. This is something you still need to learn a lot, but it's not as much as a full JD. And after that, you can sit for the bar exam in that state. And, if you're lucky, if you study hard, you pass the bar, and then you're a lawyer here as well, which is then you can work in the UN, you can work in private law firms here, you can work in other international organizations. So it's an easier way to do it. Now that I've been through it, now that I've lived through all those years, I can share with you guys, and we can talk about more specifically if you have questions about how to apply for LLMs and do all that. But you don't have to do 7 years. You can just do bachelor's there, come here for an LLM, and then study for the bar.
Okay, that's excellent to
Yeah.
hear. But
Very good question.
people that love to live in US, and yes, I think it's a bit different. But yes, because I loved when you said that the distance, how it is for us, we cross the street, and then there you cross multiple miles, kilometers.
Yeah, no, all these things that like, for example, maths was one of those examples. Remember, I was like, thank God I don't have to study math anymore, chemistry or biology. And then the guy was coming here and they're like, well, first semester you have to take math. And so all these things that, just like accept here as part of life. But it's easier to now look at retrospective, of course, than, when you're in the moment.
Yeah. And now maybe another like a bit practical question. You mentioned about visas.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to focus maybe on this visas that you had while you studied, but I wanted to ask, as you are working in international organization, which is located, yes, in United States and so on, I wanted to ask, is there any, I don't know how to say it, but not like a diplomatic, diplomats have their diplomatic.
Yes, there is.
Is there any visa for international workers in international organizations that are located in US, and how does that look? Something or some tips?
Yes, very, very, very important question that I also had to experience on my own skin. I'll give you like a side note to this. I'll respond to you, but like it's a very, very, very important question for us coming from another side of the world. It's maybe for some people it's like, no, it's one of the most important questions for us. I'll tell you like not a horror story, but like, kind of a really you think of like how stupid was it, how crazy it was, but I can share it with you guys because it's part of life. I remember when I had my bachelor's degree and I really wanted to study law. And I took this exam, which is an exam you have to take to get into law schools. And it's a very, standardized American, one of those crazy exams that we would not be used to if you studied for school in Latvia. And basically, if I didn't get enough score on that test, chances of getting into a law school would be very low, right? So I remember, like, I said to myself, I was almost like ready to kill myself. Imagine this, at the extent of that, if I didn't get into law school, because then I would lose my immigration status and I would have to go back to Latvia. Perspective, right? But it's not as crazy right now. And again, you can have people with experience like me that tells you other ways of doing things. First of all, with student visa, you have a few years of what they have now to give you, which is obligation, optional practical training. So the idea is you came to the United States, you spent all your years, effort, money on a university degree here. The United States then gives you a few years for you to practice on this visa. It's called optional practical training. It's part of a student visa. So within those few years, maybe they will give you a job visa, work visa. As an option if you work well, H-1B, they will switch you to another work visa status if you're a good worker, for example, right? In my case, I got married, so I ultimately got a green card during the years of when I had the optional practical training. That's one way. also, if you just work for an international organization, let's say I came from Latvia, let's say I didn't go to law school, which is what we were talking about, this LLM degree, remember, which is what a lot of people do today. You go to an LLM, you get an LLM, you pass the bar. You want to work for, let's say, UNICEF or UNESCO or another nonprofit organization. You get then a visa as a Latvian citizen, which is called a G4 visa, which is what you said, similar to a diplomatic visa. In fact, you get the same kind of privileges and immunities with that G4. You actually go through security without having to stop. You get, like a red carpet treatment, but it's only applicable as long as you work for that organization. So if you get the contract with the UN, it's wonderful in the sense that your visa will be then taken care of. And most people where I work in the UN today, for example, my German colleagues, my Mexican colleagues, my Spanish colleagues, they are all, and their family included, because you have dependents, right? You have wives, husbands, kids. They're all on that G4 visa, and there's no issue. So there's a way. And then they actually get through the airport. I have a green card, so I have to go through the regular US citizens green card holders. If you're on a G4, you don't even need to go through that. So you have to maintain status. Of course, you have to have contract with the UN, but that's, you would have to do that for work anyway. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That is very useful because I have as a young professional, I also have for myself even explored some ways. And it's a bit, hard to find, even now, information sometimes is a bit too much. So it's good that at least these keywords, JF4, how it can look and what you need to search. And then we have received a question from listener, watcher, because I feel this is a bit like a podcast. And listen. And the question is that basically, as your drive for career and law came to be, how did you balance your, let's say, this drive and with your private personal life, and how was that? Because you also mentioned that you had a bit of pressure, at least during your studies, to keep this visa. How do you balance it, and how do you not go crazy a bit? You know what I mean?
Maybe you do go crazy a little bit, but you just accept it. I think what helped me now, going back into that, thinking about our grandparents, thinking about my parents, all the difficulties that these guys had to go through in their life to give us, I was the first generation that was able, because I didn't, there are many immigration moves that were able to immigrate with their parents. So I immigrated myself. So I'm the first generation out here. So I carried this pressure, which is on one hand bad because it's difficult. You can go crazy. But on the other hand, it's it kind of makes you failure proof. That you know in your backbone that no matter what happens, I will not fail. I'll maintain a way of surviving. And this is this Latvian backbone that I call it, that it's if I need to go babysit for 40 hours a week on top of my law school, I'll go babysit. And that's what I did. At the time, the wage was $7 an hour. I also had to take multiple trains and buses and go babysit different kids and study until 2 o'clock at night, sometimes until 5 o'clock at night. But that's okay, because, you're going through a higher purpose. And you want to, prove it to your family, to yourself, to other young people that you can do it, But to say that, somebody came to the United States and they had this wonderful life, it's just maybe it happens to somebody, but I really don't know anybody who it happened to, So that's the story of Facebook and Instagram that I was telling you. And the happiest time of my life was when I was working in that federal prison, and nothing else mattered, in the sense that you were there to help these people. You were doing something that you're really interested in. I guess also having good family support. I mean, they didn't know anything about the US system, and they couldn't get me a laptop, but they were there for me, and that was a really good, knowing that there's somebody in Latvia who cares about me was always helpful. You will always have those personal challenges, and it will always be like to the point where at some point you think like, oh my God, I'm a complete failure. I have failed. My personal life is a disaster. My work life is a disaster. I still have those moments where I believe that, but then it's like, okay, let's remind myself of the road that I traveled, of all these people I can share this knowledge, of all the people that I can help with the work that I do. What if I just quit? Then, who's going to help all these other people? Who's going to help all the other students? Who's going to help all the other, kids at the, I actually didn't tell you this part, but if it's okay, then I'll tell you why I'm talking about the kids, So in 2010, when I was, no, 2008, 9, 10 were the years when I was with the mission. And I had this idea. Remember, I was telling you guys about when I was 25 and I was meeting all these presidents and kings and actors. So I had this idea. Why am I going to wait until I retire to give back to my community if things are really happening for me right now? So I spoke to the Latvian mission. I spoke to, at the time, the president was Zatlers and Lilita Zatler. I'm sure you all know. So I presented to them my idea, which is, you remember in our school years, we had this class, the Soviet times was called Trud, which is like, you make something with your hands. Remember, we used to like sew something or knead something together. And, Latvia, we're lucky that we have all these beautiful materials. We have linen, we have wood, we have amber, you name it, guys, right? And we have talented people that can do things with their hands. So I remember this class, and I remember that all these beautiful products that we made, they really went nowhere. We just threw them away or they got lost somewhere in school. So my idea was to have all these works of kids combined, brought to United States. I help orphan kids, so orphanages in Latvia and disabled kids in Latvia. So I collect all this artwork that they make and bring it to United States, and I organize fundraisers, events where we do this called silent auctions, where the people in United States come to this, the beautiful party, and we had this big red carpet opening for my first event with all the ambassadors and all these people from different areas, arts, politics, film industry, law, and Lilita Zatler and Valdis gave me the presidential seal in 2010, so it's approved by the Latvian government, and I do an event about a year. It's been harder since COVID, but I used to do it once a year, like religiously before. And the money goes for specific projects in Latvia for orphans and disabled kids. So that ties back into your question. You see, no matter what, no matter if I have a failure one day in my, maybe in some specific like professional issue or personal issue, that I know that this work is not for nothing. This road that I traveled, look, like, how am I going to be able to, use my influence to invite all these people to see these events, to have the president of Latvia support, to give to these kids, which is why this idea works. You know why these events are successful, why we collect money? Because people don't feel like they're giving money to like space. You know how people donate money and they don't know where it goes, and many times it goes to corruption. In this case, Latvian kids wrote little stories in English about what they made. So they'll be like this, bookmark, the Latvian bookmarks that famous, like this, the Latvian design and the ornament. I didn't bring it with me, but I have a website. I can actually tell you guys to look on my website, all these works that the kids make. So the people here, when they come to these events, they get something from a specific kid. And they had actually had the mayor of town fight with another person over these objects because they were bidding on it, right? In an auction. And they feel like they're supporting a specific real life child, somebody there. And for the kids in Latvia, it's important because they know that their lives matter and they are even known somewhere as far as United States. So that's something that helps me in those hard moments where, you have professional and personal challenges, and you're gonna have them, especially if you're a woman, even though we have progressed a lot in terms of women's rights and equality and all that. But even in your workplace, even in the United Nations today, believe me, there's still challenges. I have a son, and we're not 100% there, But these things, like these projects, that is also coming from personal, giving back to Latvia, professional interest. I always wanted to help other people, and I have this opportunity now to marry my work into this nonprofit project that I do. You do that not to go crazy, if it helps to answer your question.
Thank you. And maybe because you already started kind of answering this next question, but I just wanted also to take maybe not so, how to say, positive, maybe also ask you some, not negative, but kind of like lessons learned. As this is a seminar, webinar inside of the mentoring session, not mentoring session, mentoring program, what would be your, like, let's say 2-3 key takes him like let's say key takeaways that you would maybe kind of look back at your life, or what you would do something differently, like some preparation, some research, if I as a young professional want to come to United States just to study, or just to, like as you mentioned, I'm Latvian already, I have my degree, but I want to work in these organizations that are located there, like maybe some tips and tricks, short, what comes first to your mind?
Yeah. No, and this is, remember, you guys, just again, perspective, remember the 90s, what was happening in the 90s? Nobody knew what the hell were doing, how their life will turn out. A lot of, unfortunately, girls at the time, remember, they were marrying foreigners because they wanted to move out of the country. So, we've seen all that, right? But I think it's important to remind yourself that that is not the way to go, especially today. You yourself can accomplish something, and it's really true. I mean it 1,000%. In the UN, if you're interested in the UN Secretariat, there's not just one area of jobs that's available. It's not just the law. You have many professionals that they need in the United States. You have economists need, IT people, tech people, doctors, all kinds of professions, designers, social media people. So any skill you have, you can actually apply. You don't have to be the top 10% of your class studying politics. No, they need people with different skills. There is a test that I wanted to tell you guys about for young professionals, which is for you. They do every 2 years different job families. So you have to look on the UN website where they do this test for a number of countries, but Latvia pretty much always is there because it's underrepresented in the United Nations. And 1 year, let's say, it'll be for law. The next year will be for communications, right? It's a way to get in. You can study for it. I'm always here to give you advice because it's a very specific test, how to study for it. But it's a great, great, great opportunity. You don't need anybody. You just need yourself and to study hard, and you can do it. They will take care of your visa. Remember the immigration? They will give you that G4. If you get a contract, if you get a job, they will take care of it. You just need to look out for those opportunities, read about them, ask questions. It's all in the internet. Great opportunity. I know many people from different countries who've gotten a job. It's competitive, but people get these jobs, and it's a great opportunity. It's called the YPP, Young Professionals Exam. I can give you pointers later, but it's on the UN website, happens every year. You don't have to only work in the UN because the YPP is for the UN family in general. So you might get a job in Geneva or in Vienna or in Nairobi, in Kenya. This UN family is very big. You can go to different parts of the world. It doesn't just have to be New York. You can, pick any other area. But that's a very, very good way to get in. I would highly, if I were you right now and somebody came to me, that's the one advice I would like to hear. I wish I knew it like 20 years ago. What's one advice? Second advice is just go out there, look for those things, really just read, look, ask questions. When you feel down, which you will, sleep on it. Like sometimes I even surprise myself today in my professional life when it seems like, because right now, this year legally and professionally is very difficult. A lot of active crises. Sometimes you don't even know the solutions to how to address it legally, professionally, politically, and you sleep on it, and then the next day you might surprise yourself, you have a different perspective, which goes back to how not to go crazy. And sometimes just give it time, look at it from another angle, look at it from a different angle, look a more positive angle, give yourself 2 days just to process things, and then maybe you will look at it from another road and you find another solution. But don't give up. Ask women. You have a lot of women today that did not have this opportunity. I feel like women have progressed in the last 10 years tremendously. When I started here, there were no other women working, for example, from Latvia in the legal field, in the UN Secretariat, in this building where I'm sitting right here. I can show you, I'm looking at the UN building right now. I'm thinking 10 years ago, I was the only Latvian woman working there in the Secretariat. Today, there are more women. They're not in the legal department, but I know there are some girls now in peacekeeping department and the political department. You have a bigger sister, not just women, by the way, guys as well, people from Latvia, I mean, right? You have more people to ask. Use it. My problem for me was I came to San Francisco because my dad had a friend. So that's the only reason I went to San Francisco, because he felt like at least there'll be somebody. His friend is wonderful, but he never studied in the United States. He couldn't help me with anything. You have that today. You have no excuse, guys. I'm sorry to say that. You have no excuse. Ask, find, research. Don't be shy. It's there. If it's not for us to build it, then for who else? And think about how many people, like even today, if my job, just as simple as that, allows me to donate. For example, I work with a lot of organizations in Kenya, and I donate money to build schools there. I don't really share that a lot. Not even my family knows a lot of this work that I do in Africa. But it's my job, my own skill set that allowed me to now help these people in Kenya and help these kids, and, we can share later I can share with you information on that. But your work can help so many other people. And I think that's important to keep in mind, that you're one person, but then you have an impact on a number of people in the world. And it's truly like that. When you believe like, oh no, this is all this liberal agenda that nobody really helps each other in the world, we do. You help in your own community, you help Latvians by giving example to other Latvians through your experience that, hey, we're from a small country, but we can do a lot of these different things. Here, I'm working in the Office of Legal Affairs. I don't think they even knew. People used to ask me like, oh, is Latvia part of the United States? So there you go. Through your own work, you can actually change a lot. And, take it. Yeah.
It was definitely more than 3, but that's good.
Yeah.
No, it's great. Yes, I think I will. That's it for today, because I wanted to say that I think we will maybe invite you again, but more precisely with your, more about maybe not your studies, but more about your work, what you do, because that's also interesting part. And yes, so be ready for because
yes, and I mean, if I were just to talk about the work in the UN and the structure of the UN, and that's a whole, I think, other subject that takes us. So it's hard for me to just cramp it into, this presentation. But by all means, if you guys have questions, if anybody is interested, I'm happy to talk more about that.
Maybe one last question from my side is that, as you said that you would be ready to help, maybe is there somewhere, can we, let's say, if we receive questions, can we indicate them to you by, email, and I will then maybe forward them to you if you are open? And
yes. I'll tell you, A lot of people write to me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
But I'll honestly tell you guys, this is not about me showing off. I'm being 100% honest with you. For me to respond to all the questions on LinkedIn, I would have to take a separate full-time job to respond to questions on LinkedIn. Because as people see Office of Legal Affairs, and it's like, oh, okay, I want to come work. Can you give me a job? And it doesn't work like that, guys. You understand that, So LinkedIn is the worst for me. It's just there because it needs to exist.
I think we will try to control it, please, right?
No. But if you put it on, like, I know who you guys are now. I'm part of this mentorship program. If you put it in, like, you guys are on WhatsApp with me, WhatsApp or email, like a question from, I love working with students, because I understand the pain, let's say, right? The challenges. So I can even come maybe when I'm in Latvia next time and do like a presentation in one of the schools or universities. I don't know, we can go to a park. I don't care, But for now, I'm still here, so if you want to send it to me on WhatsApp or an email, definitely.
Yes. Okay, then thank you very much for your, openness and readiness and preparedness as well with your experience and what you have achieved for now. Not for now, but you know what I mean. Oh la la. You know what I mean. Basically, I see a lot of things happening still for you, and I hope that you reach everything what you want. And also, thank you very much for sharing your, I want to say, charity work that you do, donations. Like that. So yeah, like how to say, so it comes back tenfold, you know what I mean? And yes, and now maybe I will say bye. I will turn to Latvian again, and yeah, atvainojiet.
Liels paldies jums arī visiem.
Jā. Un jā, paldies vēlreiz Annai par šo sarunu un viņas pieredzes stāstu. Un kā jau minēju, mēs plānojam pašreiz nākamās aktivitātes, bet pašlaik es gribu jums visiem teikt paldies par to, ka jūs skatījāties un arī skatīsieties. Un tad tiekamies nākamgad, un ja jums ir kādi jautājumi un vēlaties pieteikties mūsu mentoru programmai, lūdzu skatieties mūsu biedrības slv.org mājaslapā, kur ir pieteikuma ankets. Paldies un tiekamies!